I don't hear it.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Have you switched on?
Yeah, we're live.
We're live?
Yes.
We're live. And I have to tell you about this movie I watched yesterday afternoon. It was called, what was it called, Amit? Let Them All Talk. Let Them All Talk. And of course, it had my favorite Meryl Streep in it. And she is so beautiful. She's just so beautiful and so graceful. And, her little gestures and stuff like that. And she was wearing these wraps. So I thought I'll do a Meryl Streep bit today and wear this. And in case it falls off my shoulder, it will not be a wardrobe malfunction because I'm actually wearing a kurti. So you can fall off. Okay. I have to firstly thank all of you for joining us every Sunday, and it is so great to be able to communicate directly with you. Of course, I do wish I could hear your voices instead of Amit reading me out your messages. But even then, it's great to know that you're there and that I'm actually talking to you guys. And thank you so much for all your support, for amplifying our Slow Fire Chef on social media. All of you have been absolutely super, and it's wonderful to sort of, be out there. So today what we are going to talk about is something which is very important, and it's important it's important and interesting. And it doesn't matter whether you cook or you don't cook, as long as you're living in a home and there is a kitchen around. So we are talking about kitchen disasters. And after the amount of years that I have spent cooking, believe me, I am a specialist in kitchen disasters. Talk about kitchen disasters, and I know them all because I've done them all. I've had experience of almost every disaster there is that can happen in a kitchen. And all you need to do is be unmindful, pay no attention, do something else while you're cooking, and the next thing you know, your milk has boiled over, the boiled eggs have become burnt eggs, or something or the other has gone wrong. So I am a good person to talk about kitchen disasters. So the way we're going to do this today is we're going to do it chronologically. So presuming that you are going into the kitchen to cook a meal. So we'll take it from start to finish, and we shall sort of live every disaster that you could come across at each point of the various steps towards cooking and serving a meal. Of course, there are all sorts of these danger elements which are there in the kitchen. So you've got fire, you've got sharp objects, you've got oil, you've got water, you've got spices, you've got electrical appliances, everything out there ready for war. So you have to go into that area, that space, as if you're going into a battle zone. So when you go in, you have to be ready for battle. You have to plan your moves. You have to sort of, figure out how you're going to attack and win over each step of the way. So sounds exciting, doesn't it? They should make a game on this actually. One of those, what are they called? Those video games or whatever, where you have various things in the kitchen attacking you. Wouldn't that be good fun? So, how does one avoid kitchen disasters? Well, the first thing that you need to do is get into your Zen mode. Okay, so center all your energies, think, close your eyes, and sort of be calm, be at peace, because you're going in to cook. And when you're going in, leave your mobile phone out, leave your iPad out, and do not give in to the temptation of putting that little TV screen up there on the wall, because you want your domestic workers to get entertained while they're cooking or cleaning or whatever it is. Because everybody, when there's a TV in the room, your eyes just go there. And if it's something like majorly histrionic scene happening, or somebody's dancing or singing or whatever, and you're like watching it, and next thing you know, you've got a disaster happening. So no TV screens, no mobile phones, no iPads. Do not take them into the kitchen. Do not give in to the temptation of, when the doorbell rings and your neighbor drops by for a chat at the door and you leave everything and you go and start talking to her. No, it's all right to say, hey, excuse me, I'm cooking, so I'll catch up with you later if you don't mind. And I'm sure she'll understand as well. She might come in and join you in the kitchen, that's a separate matter. But if you want to sort of, not have people there, it's okay to tell them that you're cooking, so please do not disturb. Um, and so once you go into the kitchen and you've like decided what you're going to cook, so there's going to be probably a dal and a rice or roti and some vegetables, and if you're non-vegetarian, maybe a meat dish or a fish dish or something like that. You sort of think out what you're cooking, and based on what you're cooking, you get to working your mise au plat. So unless you've bought like fresh vegetables and fresh stuff which is lying outside, the first thing you do is you open your refrigerator to get your vegetables and other ingredients out, things like ginger, garlic and green chilies and herbs, dhania patti and all that might be lying in the fridge. So the fridge is the first danger zone. The fridge, it's important to sort of be friends with your fridge, because that fridge is what is keeping your food well. It's keeping it fresh and what? It's keeping it fresh and it's keeping it edible for at least 2 to 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, sometimes even a week or 2 weeks. So it's good to be friends with your fridge. Don't overcrowd it, okay? Make sure there's enough room in your fridge for things to breathe, things that are there. The air has to circulate, that cold air has to circulate. So don't push things against the wall, okay? Sort of keep them centered. Make sure you're not overloading the fridge, and make sure you have enough space in between various containers and things like that, so that, the air can move around and circulate. Who? Hi, Anoop.
He's saying fridge is Amit's best friend.
Fridge is Amit's best friend, yes. Fridge is a lot of people's best friend. Nighttime attacks on the fridge are always a good thing. So make friends with your fridge, and those vegetable drawers, make sure you're like cleaning them out at least every 3 days, if not on a daily basis, because things tend to get forgotten. They lie in corners, and before you know it, a lemon has putrefied and it's like leaked some fluid all over the bottom of that, and as a result of that, the bhindi is gone and the beans are gone and the carrot is like, what do? I may as well go bad as well. So one thing leads to another. So your fridge is an appliance that has to be kept happy, has to be kept light.
Ash
and
has joined on time today.
Wow, hi Ash. Okay, so the fridge is the first zone that you're looking at and making sure that you avoid this disasters. Things tend to spill in the fridge, especially when you keep liquids and when you have somebody like Amit in your house who, when he's reaching for something, he has to reach for the thing which is right at the back. So make sure you're not keeping your liquidy stuff in the front. Push them towards the back, keep the smaller things in front, so that people, especially keep popular things that people might reach for, like say the bread or the jam or the fruit or maybe the leftover bacon or something like that. I mean, keep those things in front, because somebody in the house is going to come and reach for it immediately. So, they're not hopping over that beautiful kheer you've made or that big bowl of soup that's lying over there, and the next thing you know, things are spilt and it's disaster. So that is the fridge. So now once you've got all your vegetables out and things like that, and you're ready to chop and cut, the knives, the sharp instruments. Knives are not the only thing. You've got skewers, you've got those grating things. The amount of times I've, scraped my knuckles on those graters is not funny. But one thing about knives is knives love to be bloody. They have to taste blood. Even if you're a vegetarian household, that knife is going to cut you, it's going to nick you, and it's going to make sure that it gets some taste of blood, because knives are meant for blood, right? They are, dangerous things. So when you're cutting vegetables, we tend to hold it like that. And then when you're cutting, you tend to slice into your fingers or at least your nails or whatever. If you watch these chef shows, all these master chefs and all that, or if you watch people who've trained in hotels, they hold it like that, okay? So their nails, their fingers are inner, inside, and they have this gap happening here. So they're like, the knife is not slicing into them, okay? So it's a good thing to practice this. I try it. Sometimes, I mean, most times I do it. A lot of times I'm like, especially when I'm talking, I'm just holding it like that, and the next thing I know, I've got a nick or a cut. And Amit is very good at that nick and cut. So keep that box of Band-Aid in your kitchen cupboard, in one of them, and make sure that you have some Savlon and some cotton wool also in a kitchen cupboard, because they really come in handy. So chopping, cutting over. The knife is something that also is used for various things. So like, you've just chopped onions and you put the knife away, and because the onion hasn't left any stains or anything of that sort, an hour later when you look at it, you think it's a clean knife and you put it away. And then after some time, somebody comes and wants to cut a mango or something of that sort, and you cut the mango with that oniony knife, and the next thing you know, you're having, onion mango for a snack. I mean, it's okay if you're making an onion, mango salsa or something like that, but if you're just eating it fresh, then it's horrible. So the minute you've finished using the knife, wash it, okay, with some soap and water. Doesn't matter what you've cut. Just wash it with some soap and water and put it to drain. When you put it to drain, make sure you have the pointy side down, okay? Because when you're looking for something in a hurry, like a spoon or a fork or something, which might also be in that draining cup or whatever, if you sort of, brush against without looking, you'll poke yourself, or you'll cut yourself against the pointy edge of the knife. So to avoid that, make sure the pointy edge is down. When you're storing your knife, nowadays, of course, you get these beautiful wooden things in which, you slide your knives in and things like that. But if you've got children in the home, I don't know how good an idea it is to actually have your knives on display. I have personally never liked having my knives on display. I don't know, somehow the sight of a knife is must be something to do with my previous birth or something like that. But I like keeping my knives in drawers. And when you're keeping the knife in the drawer, make sure it's the handle side which is on the outer side. So when you pull open your drawer to get a knife, you're not reaching and grabbing the sharp edge, you're grabbing the handle. So just do that as a rule. I'm sure a lot of you do it. And it's better to not leave the knife lying horizontally in the drawer. So for instance, if this is your drawer and you've pulled it out, don't keep the knife like this, keep it like that. Okay, so you're grabbing this end and you're not just grabbing like that. And when you have people like Amit in the home, you need to make sure that the knives are safely stored away, so that when they pick it up to cut and chop, they're not harming or hurting themselves. So that's all about knives. And if you have any knife stories, I'll be more than happy to hear them. So now that you've finished chopping and cutting, you are ready to move towards the fire. But before you do that, you've also got the mixer grinder to go through. Oh my God, the mixer grinder. That's another story altogether. So appliances, electrical appliances especially, things like the mixie, things like the oven, things like the toaster, the microwave, these are things that again, they have their own rules. They sort of sit over there, lording it over the rest of the kitchen stuff, because they're like, oh, we only run on electricity. We're not like you goons who, need matchsticks or, things to light and whatever. I mean, we're like high tech. So they're sitting over there, but a little splash of water, and the next thing you know, you've got a short circuit, or somebody is getting a shock or something like that. So make sure your electrical appliances, things like the mixie grinder, etc., are not near water sources. So if you've got your tap here, make sure your mixie is like far away. Don't keep it on the same side or within the vicinity of the tap, because water loves splashing and water will always splash. So just make sure that your appliances are far away. And things like the microwave, you need to make sure that, you know, when you're putting things into it to say defrost, um, how are you putting it in? How is that piece of meat or whatever that you're defrosting, how is it packed? So if it's packed in something which is not microwave friendly, you need to be aware of it. So, you know, just be mindful when you're putting things into the microwave. Be mindful when you're putting things into the oven to bake. What are you baking on? I remember my mother once, she had this beautiful set of Pyrex dishes. In fact, I inherited some of those from her. And she thought that, oh, if the Pyrex works in the oven, if I put my flame on low and set the Pyrex on it, it should work as well. Because she'd made something really yummy, which was, you know, she'd kept it in the Pyrex bowl and she wanted to heat it. And I think the oven wasn't working or something like that. So Madam set the Pyrex on the gas, and the next thing she knew, the whole thing just sort of cracked and burst. And there was this yummy dish all over the kitchen and none for us to eat. So don't do experiments like that. Please sort of, you know, be a little more, you know, stick to the straight and narrow when you're in the kitchen, because a lot of people have been there, done that, written books about it, and especially if you're following, say, a recipe or something like that, listen to what that recipe has to say, listen to what they're trying to tell you, and read the manufacturer booklets on your equipment, because on your appliance, because those are really helpful, and a lot of them come with recipes as well. So make sure that, you know, you are wary of your high-tech guys who are in the kitchen. So mixing, grinding done, and when you're using the mixer and say you're making a soup, please make sure that you cool that liquid down before you put it into your you know, the blender jar and puree it or anything of that sort, because that steam that's going to get worked up inside when it's all tightly shut, and the minute you open it, I have a friend who actually got very badly burnt because her cook sort of did this, and she opened the jar without realizing how hot the liquid was inside. So avoid doing that. It just needs 3-4 minutes under a fan. Cool your liquid, pour it, maybe, you know, like those chai walas, pour it from one dish to the other, cool it down, and then blend it. It's just a little bit more effort, but it's a safer way of doing things. So now comes Mr. Fire. Oh, Mr. Fire is the big daddy of everything, because without Mr. Fire, nothing is going to cook. So fires have the gas, the burner range or whatever. This is something that you really, really need to treat with respect. So when you're lighting, make sure that you automatically go on simmer. Okay, you push the knob, and instead of staying on the high flame thing, push it down on simmer. It'll take maybe a half second more for your matchstick or your lighter to light that flame, but it will light. Okay, because what I've noticed a lot of people do is that they switch on that knob for some reason and then look for that lighter and then start, you know, trying to light it, or then light their matchstick. I don't understand why. It's very simple to have the thing handy and then turn the knob while you're pressing the lighter, or while you're, you know, you've got your matchstick lit, and then you sort of turn the knob for the gas to switch on. So please, please don't switch on, you know, switch on the gas without a fire source being there to light it, because somebody might just call you and you've forgotten that you've, you know, switched that gas on, and you turn around and the whole room is full of gas, which might sort of catch fire or something like that. I don't know if you guys have watched a movie called The Marriage of Mariah Brown, and she had this habit of lighting her cigarette at the gas. So I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but it doesn't end well, and so do not light your cigarette with the gas. Smokers beware. Buy a matchbox or buy a lighter. Anyway, now the other thing that people tend to do is once they've lit the gas, they light the gas first, then they put their pan on it and they let the pan heat. Why? I don't know. It might have been a good idea in the old days when you had, you were using really slow fire, you were using coal or wood or whatever. So it took a long time for that pan or pot to heat. But nowadays with gas, and with the kind of cooking utensils that we use, these are all fast heating utensils. The metal that they use, whatever combination, whatever, it's not like the old thick vessels which took time to heat up. So nowadays things heat fast, and especially if you're using, say, non-stick ware, it's not good to heat non-stick ware without something in it. So either oil or water or whatever that you're using as your cooking medium, make sure you pour that into your pan and then you light the fire and then let things heat slowly on slow fire. Because especially if you've got oil and you heat it on high flame, one is oil, different oils have different smoking temperatures or whatever. And a lot of oils, it's not a good idea to heat it beyond a certain, because the properties change or whatever, and it becomes from a healthy oil, it tends to become an unhealthy oil. So it's not a good idea to heat your oils on a high flame. A slow fire, a low flame, gives you a certain sense of control over what you're doing as well. So it sort of, builds your confidence. I mean, even if you're doing things like browning onions and stuff like that, the minute you sort of know that you can control that flame and decide how things are going to get cooked, you find you're much more confident as a cook. You have more confidence over the war zone. That what happens when you tend to use high heat for oil, and then you swill that pan around, that kadhai around, and then the next thing you know, a little bit of oil has like caught the flame of the gas, and you've got this burning pan of oil in your hands. And don't panic. Just make sure whatever pan you're using, keep the lid for the pan close by. So all you need to do is shut down the lid. When you shut down the lid, there's no oxygen inside the pan, so the fire burns out. That's the quickest, safest way to get rid of that fire. Do not pour water. Pouring water is just going to make things worse. Okay, that fire is going to splash on you, because you know what happens to liquid when you put it into oil, hot oil. Do not pick up that pan and look for somewhere to put it away or take it outside or something of that sort, because then what you're doing is you're fanning the flames. And Anoop, support me here, come on, this is all physics and chemistry, this is more your area of expertise than mine. But so don't fan the flames, do not carry that pan outside, just shut it with a lid. If you don't have a lid, get some, what do you call that? Aluminum foil or a cookie sheet or something. Cover it with that, just cover it. Don't use cloth, okay? And worst comes to worst, you can sprinkle salt. Salt will cut out the fire. Do not use flour. Do not use things that burn in heat, burn more in heat. Salt has a...
saying you're doing well, nothing for me to add.
Salt has a way of absorbing heat. So like even if your oil has heated too much and you want it to cool down, add your salt into that oil and things will cool down, and then you can go ahead and do the tempering or whatever it is that you need to do. So that is one disaster that's quite common. And I have a friend who's now a very proficient cook, but the first time he was tempering his rajma or something, this happened, and he happened to put his face forward and look into it, and he singed his eyebrows off. So he was looking quite weird for I think a couple of months at least or something. It took that long for his eyebrows to grow back.
Anup is
But
saying good advice so far. May I suggest having a mini fire extinguisher in the kitchen?
yes, yes, I was coming to that. It is very important to keep a fire extinguisher in your kitchen or near your kitchen, but keep it out of reach of children because kids, they like to play with things. So just make sure that it's kept in a place which is easily reachable by adults or by people who are cooking. It can be right outside your kitchen door, it can be behind your kitchen door. That is, and it needs to be a particular type of chemical, I think, inside that for these oil fires or grease fires, because so just check with the fire safety guys around your town, in your town or your building or wherever it is, because they will be able to advise you best as to what is the kind of fire extinguisher that you need. Okay, especially if you're living in an apartment, because you're not just endangering yourself and people who live in your home, but you're also endangering the people who are living above you and below you, depending on which way the fire might spread, should, touch wood, uh, things sort of get out of hand or whatever it is. Another thing about being near the fire is don't use fabric. When you're picking up your kadhai, there's a huge temptation to just pick up the kitchen cloth and use it to lift up the pan. Try and avoid that. Get yourself one of those clamps. You get very good clamps in India now. You get the fancy ones which are like horizontal and vertical. Then you get the normal old-fashioned ones. I have a couple of those old-fashioned ones, and they're really very good to use. You can, I think, any shop, any battanwala shop will have, utensil shop will have those ones. So try and pick those up. You also get those, what are they called? Those plasticky things nowadays, which are silicone things. Yeah, you get those silicone things to hold, but I find they're not really very heat proof. The heat sort of seeps through that, so it's okay to keep next to your your cooking area to sort of hold the thing firmly or something of that sort. But when it comes to picking up, make sure you're using a clamp. Okay, or then switch off the fire and then pick it up. But while the fire is burning, don't use a cloth. Try and avoid keeping fabric anywhere around where you're cooking. Fabric, paper, any of those things, keep them away. Like if you're using a recipe book to cook, or maybe a sheet of paper on which you've jotted down your recipe, keep it in your mesopla area. Don't keep it near the gas. And the other thing is, when you're cooking, try and avoid wearing synthetic clothes, because synthetic clothes tend to stick to you when they get hot, and they create burns which are worse than it would be. Like a cotton fabric, if it burns, it doesn't sort of try and get close to your skin. It burns where it is and it goes out. But synthetic grabs the heat more, and it sort of sticks to your skin, and there have been some really bad burns and things like that. Luckily, I have not ever had to experience that, but I know people who've had that kind of an experience. Another thing that you should keep near or in your kitchen is a little pot with some aloe vera growing in it. Aloe vera is fantastic. It's really the best thing for burns of any kind, whether it's a scald or a scorch or any of those kind of things. Just break off the tip, one of those leaves, and break into it. You have the liquid, that jelly-like thing inside. Rub it over the burn area. It cools it down. It's an antiseptic, and you very rarely even have a blister or a scar at the end of it. Believe me, aloe vera works. Aloe vera is also good for skin. Aloe vera is good for the hair, and of course there are lots of people who also drink aloe vera juice. But growing a small pot of aloe vera, and it grows very easily, and it grows everywhere and anywhere. You hardly need to water it. Just keep it in a slightly sunny spot so that it's getting its own nutrition, and keep that aloe vera pot in your kitchen.
Rup is saying spot on, aloe vera repairs skin and
Yeah.
particularly good for burns.
Yeah, very good for burns. My grandaunt taught me about aloe vera, and when I'd gone visiting her, she gave me, soon after I was married, she gave me this plant and she said, "Here, you're going to start cooking, now grow this aloe vera and keep it there." She called it Grito Kumari or something like that. Anyway, so then when you finished cooking, make sure you switched off all your knobs. I did this once in Bangalore. I was cooking something, I was boiling it, and I had it on simmer. And Amit got this brilliant idea. He didn't know I hadn't finished cooking. So he said, "Hey, you want to go shopping for something or the other?" So I promptly said, "Yeah, let's go." And I walked off without realizing that my gas was on. 2 hours into our shopping spree, I remembered that, oh, I don't think I switched off the gas. So Amit and I sort of raced back because we were staying in a rented apartment, and I didn't want things sort of, bursting and catching fire and all that. So we raced back and the gas was still on, but luckily because I'd left it on slow fire, there wasn't any untoward incident. But these are things that can happen. So ever since that happened, every time we're sort of stepping out of the house, I make sure I go to the kitchen and I make sure that I check, are all my knobs off, is my main off, and only then do I leave the house. It is very important, okay? Leaving the gas on, I mean, there have been times when I set some eggs to boil, and boiling eggs is a boring chore, right? And come outside and pick up the iPad and, sort of start scrolling through or whatever it is. And then after half an hour, Amit is like, "Something's burning." And I said, "Eggs." So boiled eggs became charred black eggs. These are things that happen. These are things that one needs to avoid. So, which is why I said in the beginning, kitchen time is kitchen time. Do not think of doing anything else when you're cooking, because even if you're making a cup of tea, sort of, stand there, maybe sing to that tea, or entertain yourself, while that tea is cooking, so that things don't go wrong. Also make sure that your cooking range, or the gas burners, whatever you're using, make sure that you get the maintenance done and the servicing done on a regular basis. That gas pipe, it sort of wears out, and I've known people who've had the same gas pipe for like 5 years, 6 years, which is, I think, a total no-no, because especially in our kind of climate in India, with so much humidity, and sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold, varying temperatures and things like that. These are things that sort of wear out very fast, and so just call up your gas agency. Don't get any, as in Hindi they say, "Era gera nathu khera." So don't ask a local person to come and sort of fix your gas cooker or your pipes. Please call your gas agency, the people who supply you with the gas, because they have people who are trained in how to figure all this out, because that gas is, it's a very sensitive thing. And
Kirti Kapoor has joined. Said hi, sorry for joining.
hi Kirti Kapoor,
Nice
good to
tips.
have you here. And the other thing about gas cookers and fire is that nowadays they make them with like 4 burners or sometimes 6 burners, and you've got something cooking on the front burner, and obviously the front burner is the big guy who's sort of bubbling away, and you want to reach out and stir the one on the back burner, so you tend to stretch over what is cooking in front, and the next thing you know, that steam is scalding your arm or whatever it is. So avoid that. If you have to stir, see if you can move to a side and stir, or then wait, move this off, switch it off, or whatever it is, and then stir the guy on the back burner. So just be aware of what you're doing, because we tend to sort of, when you're cooking, you're doing things in a rush, especially if you've got 3 things on burners. You're sort of stirring this, adding something there, pouring something here, and there have been times when I don't realize that I've moved a kadhai away and the flame is still on, Yeah.
Old Soul has joined us.
Wow, hi, old soul. Good to have you here. Okay, and the gas is still burning, and you've put your arm over it, and it's like, oops, what's this heat? And next thing you know, you've probably got a burn or something. So if you've got those 4 burner, 6 burner kind of ranges or cooking things happening, just make sure that you are very aware of what is cooking where. Okay. So, and okay, one more thing, which is to do with fires and the pressure cooker. Oh, the pressure cooker is a very scary thing, and I had a dog called Snoopy who was terrified of pressure cookers. And the only reason he even allowed a pressure cooker to live in the house was because his meat would get cooked in it. So he was like, okay, the pressure cooker can be there, but when the pressure cooker is doing its pee, pee, puss, and all that, he used to go and hide in the bathroom and pause on his ears, kind of thing. So the pressure cooker is something that frightens me also, and I'm extremely wary of it, even though I use it almost daily.
Someone called Ben has joined who said, for me, a regular disaster is overfilling the pressure cooker, resulting in a mess everywhere.
Yes, exactly,
Say hi to
exactly.
Ben.
Hi, Ben.
And the solution is simple: resist the temptation to make more gravy, lessen the water.
Yeah. So when you're using the pressure cooker, one is make
Say
sure. Ben has got a very good point. If you guys are reading his remark, when you're using the pressure cooker, number one, read the uh, manufacturer's booklet on it, the manual on it, because he will tell you how many liters it is and how to use it and things like that. So you have that TTK kind of pressure cooker, which you have to wait for the pressure to rise before you put the whistle on. Then you have that other kind of pressure cooker, the Hawkins, where the lid just goes on with the whistle on regardless. And so you need to make sure that you know exactly how much liquid you can add to it. Like Ben is saying, overfilling liquid or overfilling that pressure cooker is bound to lead to a disaster. So resist that, keep the liquid to a minimum. You can always add more water or more stock or whatever it is you need to add to your dish once the dish has cooked, because the pressure cooker is basically softening the action of the pressure cooker is to soften your rajma or to soften your dal.
I agree with Ben. Lesser water gives nice long whistles and it doesn't sputter hot water and steam out of the relief wall.
Yeah.
And KP saying, I've scalded my arm on the hot tawa. Now I have learned to remove it from the stove once use is over.
Yeah. So Katie, I'm going to come back to that hot tawa again. I have a very nice story on that. But with the pressure cooker, like they're saying, keep the liquid low. Let the pressure, don't put your face on top of it when you're opening it. And I don't know if you saw that episode with my sister where she shows you how to open the lid so that the lid opens away from you and not this way. Okay, so open it away from you, don't open it towards you, because that hot steam is going to sort of just come out of there. So just be extremely cautious with the pressure cooker. And there have been so many times when it's been overfilled and that whistle has blown off, and the next thing I know there's like a fountain of dal sort of going right up to the ceiling, and I have a beautiful yellow ceiling, dripping dal all over the kitchen. So please avoid those, and wait for that pressure cooker to cool down before you try opening it. Don't give in to the temptation of holding it below that water tap to bring the pressure down quickly, because it's going to change the shape of that cooker, because you're putting extreme temperatures on something that needs to cool down gradually. So don't use extreme temperatures, not a good idea. Don't keep fiddling with that pressure valve, because all you're doing is you're sort of ruining this thing which has been made with a lot of precision and care. Don't bang your ladle on the side of that cooker, because again you're sort of spoiling the pot. So avoid these things with the pressure cooker. Treat it with respect. Where hot tawas are concerned, my maid taught me a really good trick, and she said she didn't know why she did it, but I figured out why she did it. So every time she would finish cooking the rotis, she would always put a small bit of dough, roll it up and flatten it, and she would put it on that tawa. I think that was like an indicator to anybody passing by or anybody coming into the kitchen or even you that this tawa is hot. It's been used, so it's hot, please do not touch it. Okay, that was like a silent indicator to anybody and everybody coming into the kitchen that this tawa has been cooked upon. So I've actually started doing that, and even if I don't have any dough left over because I finished it all making the rotis, I take a little dry flour and I just sprinkle it on top so that if Amit comes in like 10 minutes after I've gone out of the kitchen, he knows that this tawa is hot, so he shouldn't touch it. So maybe you should try doing that, Kirti, and it tells you and it tells everybody else that that tawa is hot. Okay, now that we've kind of finished with the fire, and the other thing about fire and water, as you know, they don't mix. So when you have things boiling over and clogging up your, switching off the flame because the water has fallen on it, the dal has sort of fallen on it, or the rice, the kanji from the rice, the starch from the rice has fallen and, sort of put out the flame. And you've not realized it, but that.
Ben is saying, speaking of tawa, any tips regarding sticking of the roti to the tawa? I'm terrible with fulkas and chapatis, and my tiny brain can't gauge the right consistent temperature to keep the atta from sticking.
So the best way to use a tawa when you're making those chapatis, Ben, is when you heat your tawa nicely, okay, then put it on low flame. And once you put it on low flame, sort of give it like 2 minutes, 3 minutes while you're rolling out your roti, and let the temperature of the tawa come down. Then you put your roti on it and let it cook for around 40 seconds or so on one side, and only then pick it up and turn it on the other side. You'll find that your chapati is not sticking. And once you cook the other side, again for another 20-30 seconds or whatever it is, depends, are you sort of raising, fluffing it up on the tawa itself, or do you do that on the direct flame? Because I do it on the direct flame, so I do 30 seconds one side, 30 seconds the other side, and then I put it on the flame and it bloats up nicely. So the thing is,
saying the dough is a good idea.
So the thing with making rotis is initial roasting do on low flame, and then when you're puffing it up, then you do that part on high flame. And if your tawa is too hot, the atta will stick and it'll burn, as Amit knows. So now that we've so make sure that your rice isn't boiling over, because it'll put the flame out. Or if you put a kettle on to boil, or you've put milk on to boil, please watch them. Please stand over there, and they do say that a watched pot never boils, and the minute you look away, it's going brrr, Mount Etna kind of thing happening over there.
But he's saying old tip given by Nani was to use dry flour test to whether tawa was hot. She said a light browning or dry flour was
desired. You can do those tests, but I mean, like after a while. So Kirti, the flour test is a good idea, and a lot of people do use it, I'm sure. I don't know, I've actually never done this. One just sort of goes by instinct and a little distant hand thing, and maybe that first roti is a roti that you abandon because your tawa wasn't hot enough. But it's preferable for the tawa to be not hot enough, because you can cook that roti for longer than your tawa being too hot, and the next thing you know, you've got these dark brown burnt bits happening on the side that sort of went down first. So when you have things boiling over on your gas and the gas getting put off, not because you've turned the knob, but because the liquid has fallen on it, then there is again a danger of that gas leaking out, and you're not being aware of it. So please stand there and make sure that you watch the milk, or you watch the water, or that you're there for the chai while it's bubbling, or that you're there for the dal when it's cooking, if you're cooking it on an open fire, and things like that. And
Anup is
certain
saying I have watched mom make fulka on the flame after tawa, but I have never tried it. My chapatis look like map of Africa and Australia, and I try not to do so. Tell them to watch
Anup,
that episode with.
Anup, you have to watch that episode where Amit makes rotis, and he's got this secret formula for how to make perfect circle rotis. So, not that it matters what shape your roti is, because you're just going to be eating it. As long as it cooks, that's fine. It cooked, that's fine.
Which episode?
This was the vegetarian thali episode. Yeah, I think it was the vegetarian thali episode. We'll send you a link for that. So, but rotis are something that just needs practice, nothing else. I mean, do it 5 times, 6 times onwards, you get it right. The first time I made a roti, it was like papad, and I was the only one who ate it. And in fact, there's this very funny story. Did I tell it last time? I think I did. Where my aunts, every time they made rotis, they wouldn't eat their dinner. I think I did. Anyway, so once you've like done with that, water. Now, water is something that loves getting spilled. Water just loves splashing around. Water just loves being everywhere. And you need to really be careful with water, because water is something that moves into places that it's not supposed to be in. And if you've spilled something, please mop it up immediately, because you, while you're rushing around, might forget there's water on the floor and you'll slip and fall. Or somebody else walking into the kitchen who doesn't know that water is there might slip and fall. Then water has a lovely way of, like kitchen floods. Have you ever had kitchen floods where the pipe from your sink to the drain has sort of slipped off, and the next thing you know, your whole kitchen is filled with water? I hate those kitchen floods, and it tends to happen to me at least once in 6-8 months or whatever it is. Doesn't matter how new that that fixture is or whatever it is, it always slips out. And Bombay somehow has this system where they have these things that sort of screw on, so there's nothing else to hold them. I find that really weird. I think they should have women designing these things instead of men doing it all the time, because women really understand how a kitchen needs to function. So if you have a kitchen flood, I make sure that even though the rest of my mops and brooms and all that is in a different location, but I make sure that I keep one mop in the kitchen, because it's one of those things on a long handle which even Amit can use. So it doesn't you don't need to bend and things like that. So I make sure there's a mop handy, and I make sure that there's always a separate kitchen cloth for wiping up spills on the higher surfaces and things like that. And so it's very important that you do that. It's very important that you keep things clean and dry and all that, because you don't want to, it's an icky feeling, right? So you don't really want to have that icky feeling when you're cooking. But if you spill something on your gas, don't try cleaning it up immediately, especially when the gas is lit. Don't give in to that temptation. Switch off the gas, remove the pot, and then clean, and then restart your cooking or something of that sort. For 1 minute, if your pot is off the fire, it's not going to do any harm to the food that you're cooking. But if you can hold it off or whatever, cleaning up the gas, hold it off, no problem there, because nobody's going to be walking over there, right? Then when you're draining the area where you drain your dishes, because of the humidity in our country and all that, those dishes never really dry out or drain out properly. So you still need to dry them with a cloth. So make sure that you're not lazy. Don't be lazy. It's just 2 plates or 1 plate, and maybe a pan or a pot or something like that. Wipe it up before you store it away in your cupboard or drawer, wherever you're keeping your dishes.
But I can't go to take anything because I'm not properly dressed.
Here, have a. Amit's hungry, so I'm offering him some pepper. You can munch on this.
No,
Huh?
I don't.
Okay. So, have a sip of coffee.
No.
Okay. So just dry up your dishes nicely, and so that because when you don't dry them up, things like fungus and all that tends to happen, and you're again cleaning and mopping. I mean, sort of washing all over again. The other thing to be careful with in the kitchen is spice. Spice is spicy, especially red chili powder. I don't know how many of you have seen that movie called, what was it called? Mirch Masala. Beautiful film, amazing film, really impactful. And of course, it's all about the condition of women and zamindar and all that stuff. But it actually shows how lethal red chilies can be, because in the end, I think, okay, I won't do a spoiler here. You guys watch the movie and come back to it. But red chilies is used as a weapon. So if you've got the fan going because it's hot or something like that, the weather is hot, that red chili powder is probably going to fly around, and next thing you know, you're sneezing, you've got a sneezing fit, or it's blown into your eye or something like that. So while you're using things like red chilies and pepper and other things that burn, um, just switch off the fire, because switch off the fan, because it's a question of 5-10 minutes. It's not going to make that much of a difference. And just make sure that you use a spoon to put it in your dish that you're cooking, and don't get into the temptation of using your fingers, because once they get onto your fingers, even though you wash your hands, they tend to sort of, the oil of the chili tends to stay on your skin, and the next thing you know, you're rubbing your eyes, or scratching your ear or something, or you'll find that your eyes obviously will start watering, but you'll find a slight sensation of burning uh, you know continuing on your fingers once you've handled chilies. And I don't know if you've ever tried grinding chilies on that stone thing, but when you do that, and you sort of move it forward towards you, this part sort of, it's got this constant burn happening, which is quite a nice sensation actually, but not good for eyes, not good for nose, not good for a lot of things. And so just be careful when you're handling spice, because spice can also be very wicked. Then earth. You're going to ask me, how does earth feature in a kitchen? Earth features in a kitchen because your vegetables all come with earth. So especially, vegetables like the green leafy stuff, which is supposed to be so healthy, stuff like spinach and pok choy and leeks and stuff like that, they all have a little bit of mud happening inside. And if you're not careful while washing them, that can of course get into your meal, give you a lot of crunch, unsavory crunch, and then give you health issues later on. I remember we'd gone to this fancy 5-star restaurant, and I ordered this steamed pok choy, which was delicious, but they hadn't sort of taken it off the bulb. It was like steamed whole, and I put it into my mouth, and I got this really awful crunch. And because it was a hotel and it was a fancy lunch and all that, I couldn't sort of spit it out, though I did try and ask for a paper napkin or something, and but a lot of it went into me, and I was in bed or in the loo for the next 2 days or something like that. So please make sure that vegetables like this, you wash them properly. Coriander, it's good to soak these guys and then wash them under running water, so that whatever earth is, mud is sticking to them, gets loosened and stuff like that, and then you sort of wash it off with and if you have an eyesight problem, like if you need reading glasses to read a book or a letter or something, please use reading glasses while washing your vegetables, because you want to see that you've got all the dirt out. And things like leeks and all, there, and spring onions, there the mud is on the inside. So when you're cutting spring onions or leeks, it's good to sort of cut them in half vertically, and then sort of open it up, fan it out with, you hold one end and you fan out the other end to see if there's any mud on the inside, and then wash it under water. So air, fire, earth, water, big problems, big danger zones. Then, of course, you have the drains. Oh my God, the drains. And the drains, you need to make sure that at least once a week or once every 2 weeks, you're using something like Drain X or something so that your drain isn't clogged up. Pouring hot water down is a good idea because that sort of washes out a lot of the oil and grime and stuff like that. And the drainage area, it's very important to keep it clean. So if you've got your garbage bin over there, especially for people like Amit and I who are tall, bending down to throw that garbage is something you tend to forget to do. And especially when you're cooking or you just finished eating and you don't really want to bend down because your tummy is too full, you tend to sort of throw the garbage from a height, and aim is never good. And you have these little bits of garbage or coffee grounds or whatever sort of happening on the walls of those of that area. So you need to sort of make sure that you clean that area as often as possible, once a day at least, if not twice. Get your domestic worker to sort of do it yourself, because then you really are sure that it's absolutely clean. And because that area being clean means also a lot of things like roaches and people like that are not attracted to your kitchen, which is good. There's some people you don't want over there. And that's also a good area to sort of stow away your disinfectants and your cleaning liquids and stuff like that. And you know if you can, of course, get garbage bins which are at a height, which you'll notice in a lot of these hotels and stuff like that. They have garbage bins which are really tall, so that people throwing things, they go into the bin and not somewhere else. Have I gone on beyond 1 hour? Okay. And talking about roaches, I understand that cockroaches. We had a long chat with our
Ash has a
question.
tip
Huh.
for avoiding kitchen disasters. Avoid men in kitchen.
Ash, that is
Why? So that they
so
because they get
Ash
amulets.
says
No, that's the answer.
Ash says you should avoid men in the kitchen, but well, there are different ways to use men in the kitchen, Ash. It doesn't always lead to disaster. It might lead to other things, but I'm not sure about disaster. But anyway, so a good thing to do is also to have a pest control, a contract with a good pest control company. So they like come in once every 3 months or something like that, and make sure that especially if you're living in an apartment, because the roaches from upstairs, the roaches from downstairs, and in our country, which is so full of garbage everywhere, roaches and rats and all these kinds of creatures sort of really populate the whole area. So you want to make sure that they're not coming to live in your house. So you get that pest control guy, and there's some very good ones out there, and they use a lot of herbal stuff. So if you have pets in the house, it's not so dangerous for them. I remember with Snoopy and Chew, we used to make sure that they didn't do that spray, that DDT kind of spray, but they used to do these dot things all around, which wasn't reachable by the dogs. So it was quite safe. And talking about pets, if you have pets, and we've had pets for the longest time ever, don't let them into your kitchen if you can, because pets have hair and they tend to sort of shake their head. I mean, anything with hair, like even humans, we apparently lose 100. It's normal to lose 100 hairs a day. So with pets, you don't know when they're coming in, when they're going out. I was actually happy that Snoopy was terrified of the pressure cooker, because that meant most of the time he stayed out of the kitchen. He would only come in to ask for his meals. But we used to have a dog as a child who only loved my mother, and he only sat at her feet every day while she cooked. So I mean, we were fine with it, but there might be guests who come over who don't appreciate pet hairs floating around in their soup. So try and avoid pets in the kitchen. And for the human element, I've discovered these. These are really good, um, especially now that one's growing older. These are nice things to have, or you can use a regular hair net. Did I freeze again?
Yeah, just say that again.
So these are good things to have. You can use something like this. They're pretty reasonable and economical, and you can sort of just use these on your hair. And you can use this, so you get those normal hair nets or whatever it is, and you're not having a hair disaster or a bad hair day in your kitchen at least. So these are
Anup is saying I don't have 100 days. I'll be born every day.
well, for those who are gifted with hair, or who have the bane of having hair. So that's basically it. And if you guys have any more tips or any more useful things or experiences vis-a-vis kitchen disasters, I'm sure we can do one more, because I haven't even started talking about all the disasters that I've caused, created, and done. But we'll see you guys again in the
Tell them to suggest more topics.
in the next week's podcast. But meanwhile, it would be lovely if you could come across, we've been sort of pushing our topics onto you so far. So it would be good fun if maybe you came up with some suggestions of what you think we should be talking about, or something that you want to find out about, and we can tell you about our experiences vis-a-vis those. Meanwhile, next week I'm going to do something a little different, a little arty-farty, so be prepared for that. And no, I'm not going to be singing or dancing or doing any of all that rubbish. So bye-bye, and see you guys again soon, and thank you for being there.